Hi, everyone. My name is Reshma Jaigoban. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Student Development and Leadership Coordinator in the Office of Student Life. Welcome to today's workshop, Boosting Your Metabolism, Food-Based Strategies for Health, presented by Dr. Bernard and registered dietitian Stephanie. Before I pass the floor to our wonderful presenters, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Some of you have heard it before. Auto captions are turned on, so you can enable or disable that using your Zoom menu. We find that cameras foster an engage and learning environment, so we ask that you turn your cameras on if you feel comfortable. Please keep your mics muted to minimize any background noise. We are recording the session to be posted on YouTube, and that will take about a week or two. Please utilize the raise your hand feature if you have an immediate question. We encourage you to use the chat for any questions that will be addressed at the very end. And lastly, a considerable amount of effort is put into organizing these types of events, and both by our office and of course by our presenters. Whether you choose to stay on camera or go off camera, we kindly ask that you stay mentally present throughout the session and answering any questions that might be asked and participating in any activities. And that's my spiel for now. I'll I'll pass the floor to Dr. Bernard and Stephanie.
All right. Thank you, Reshma. I'm Stephanie McBurnett. I'm a registered dietitian with PCRM. I know your last presenters, Dr. Roxy Becker and dietitian Noah Prasma, were also from PCRM. So Dr. Barnard and I are very happy to be here today. Where at PCRM, we're a nonprofit health organization where we focus on prevention over pills, really talking about nutrition to manage chronic diseases. So today I am presenting, and I'll share my screen. On plant-based diets for metabolism. So how plant-based nutrition impacts our metabolic health. So let's just start with the basics. What is a plant-based diet? I know this was addressed in the last series, but what I'm talking about today is a vegan diet, a plant-based diet as a vegan diet. It includes only plant foods. So foods like fruits, vegetables, beans, grains, nuts, and seeds, as you're seeing in this diagram, and avoiding any animal foods. So meat, dairy, eggs, and honey. And then let's just talk about metabolism. It's a little bit of a buzzword, right? People just throw, oh, this is good for your metabolism. They're kind of throwing it around a lot. But what metabolism is the chemical processes in your body that take place when we convert our food and we combine, it breaks, it gets digested, broken down into its little pieces, and then it's combined with oxygen and it creates energy. It creates ATP, which then we can burn to move our muscles, right? To do all the processes of the day. So your metabolism is never at rest. It's always functioning because we need this energy for breathing, for circulating our blood, digesting food, growing and repairing cells. So kind of our immune system is involved with this, managing our hormone levels, and I'll talk more about that later, and regulating blood or body temperature. So some of the components of energy metabolism is going to start with the basal metabolic rate, right? So that's what I just talked about. That is what we need to keep the lights on. So when a baby is sleeping, they are using the energy from the basal metabolic rate. Then we have the thermic effect of food, right? Just by eating food, we actually need energy to digest food. And then there's the energy for exercising. This is kind of intentional exercising, going for a run. And then non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is chores, this is cleaning, this is standing. And all those things together create our total daily energy expenditure, which is like our energy metabolism, all wrapped into one. So I'm going to go through these one by one, just to give you kind of this fundamentals of what our metabolism is. So the basal metabolic rate also is called resting metabolic rate. You might have heard that, or resting energy expenditure. I know all these words, but really what this means is this is our basic life-sustaining functions. This is when we're sleeping. This is going on. We need energy. This is breathing, circulation, nutrient processing, adjusting our hormone levels, cell production. This is actually the largest amount of energy that we need. It's about 70% of our total daily needs come from just keeping the lights on. And this is influenced by various factors. Could be sex, age, height, fat mass, our muscle mass, hormones, and spoiler alert, maybe diet. So I'll talk more about that later. So the thermic effect of food, that's the energy we need to digest, metabolize, absorb, and even store our food. This is about 10% of our total energy. It's influenced by age. Our meal timing can actually affect this. And then the macronutrient composition, right? So what is that? Macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And each one of these uses a different amount of energy to digest. So we'll start with fats. Fats typically immediately get processed into energy. We barely digest them. They just go right in. 0 to 3% of our thermic energy is for digesting fats. For carbohydrates, it's a little higher. Now, this is the carbohydrates when you have some bread, when you're having a Pop-Tart, when you're having, something kind of this more processed wheat. It's going to be it's going to use about 5 to 10% of this thermic effect. It's not very high. We don't need many calories to burn that. For protein, a little bit higher, about 20 to 25%. It takes more energy to digest a protein than it does for a fat or a carbohydrate. But what tops them all? Fibrous carbs, those whole foods. We have to break them down. It takes a while. They're slow to release. That's going to use more energy, up to 25%. So it's the highest. So imagine having a whole food, a legume, right, which is both a fibrous carb and a protein. You're actually going to be burning maybe more calories to digest than consuming. We'll talk more about this later. So then we have our exercise activity thermogenesis. This is 0 to 10%, because if people aren't working out, it could actually be 0. So you're not putting any money in the bank for this one. It's intentional exercise. So this is going for a run, lifting weights, going for a swim, doing a boxing workout. So it's very variable depending on the person, right? Because one person might be going for a run every day and burning a lot of calories in that regard, and a typical, someone might not be working out at all, right? So it's very variable. Then we have non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I know that's a mouthful, neat. So this ranges as well, but this is that walking to the bathroom, standing, cooking, cleaning, and even fidgeting. So when you have to, during COVID, we all got stuck in our homes, and all this non-exercise activity went almost to 0, right? Because we're no longer walking to the grocery store, walking to work, we're not outside our homes, walking to class. So this kind of is affected by that. And it accounts for actually more of your daily calorie burn or energy than even an intentional workout. It's about 15%. So it really does matter if you park further away from the grocery store and decide to walk in, right, instead of parking right at the front. So really kind of maybe taking the stairs instead of elevator, that is this kind of activity. And this, again, is very variable between individuals. I mean, I'm sure you all know that one friend that just fidgets all the time, always tapping their toe, just can't sit still. And typically they burn more energy during the day for that. So all this together, your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, plus the thermic effect of food, plus, which is funny, the energy activity thermogenesis, which actually it's EAT is the acronym, plus NEAT is all our total daily energy expenditure. So this is going to be our metabolism as a whole. So now that we kind of know the basics, how do we know if our metabolism, if we do have a healthy metabolism, or if everything's working the way it should be? So one way is if you're maintaining a healthy weight, or you have pretty good weight management, especially as we age, you know that this metabolism, this in and out, is balanced, right? So another way is having good energy levels. You feel like, oh, I can go do this. I can go, I'm feeling good today. Maybe I'll go for that workout that I've been planning for the last week. Having a healthy immune system. We talked about metabolism being a part of cell repair and cell replication correctly. Like, so that all is involved with this. And good overall health. If you have, if your heart healthy, you have good blood pressure, all of that does kind of go into the chemical processes of, and, food entering and energy exiting. And then proper hormonal regulation is actually tied to metabolism. And so insulin is a hormone produced by our pancreas. And when we have a healthy metabolism, we are very insulin sensitive. We eat carbs, the glucose, the sugar goes into our blood. Our pancreas releases insulin. Insulin lets all that sugar into our cells so we can move around. So when you're insulin sensitive, and we'll talk more about this later, you have a healthy metabolism. So what does a dysregulated metabolism look like, right? So there is this diagnosis called metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is a cluster of health conditions. 3 out of 5 of these health conditions here listed. So I'll talk a little bit about those. So first of all, if you have a imbalance of intake and expenditure, you're going to have more visceral, more stomach obesity. So if your waist is over 40 inches as a man or 35 inches as a woman, that would be an indication that you have high visceral obesity. So that is one of these conditions. Hypertension, high blood pressure is involved with metabolic syndrome. Not, you're maybe not consuming the right foods, and it's affecting now the blood pressure in your veins. Insulin resistance. We talked about insulin sensitivity, but when your cells are not able to accept insulin, they're not able to accept blood sugar, and then you have high blood sugar, and that's the root cause of diabetes, is insulin resistance. Another condition is high triglycerides. So if maybe your intake is a lot of fast food, a lot of candy, a lot of these processed carbohydrates, very quick burning, that can give you, and even alcohol can raise your triglycerides. And the 5th condition is having a low HDL cholesterol, but I would like to just wrap that all into having abnormal cholesterol in general. Having a total cholesterol, out of the norm, over 200 would be considered abnormal. Having an LDL over 100, LDL cholesterol is that inflammatory cholesterol, is that bad cholesterol. And if you have 3 out of 5 of these, you can be diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, which clinically states to your doctor that you're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease, which is heart disease, for stroke, and for type 2 diabetes. Your metabolism is off. So the good news, I know I just went through some heavy stuff, but how can plant-based diets, how can our diets support a healthy metabolism? So plant-based diets have been shown to be great for weight management. They're high in fiber, low in calories. So you're intaking a higher volume, but the energy that comes out is not going to be over what you need. So that is one way. Plant-based diets are great for cardiovascular health. We talked about abnormal cholesterol levels. Well, if you're consuming foods that have no cholesterol, no dietary cholesterol, and are lower in saturated fats, which plant-based foods are, I know Dr. Becker talked about this, you're going to have better cholesterol numbers. Blood sugar control. These high fiber foods, they release very slowly into your bloodstream. And they're low in fat. So they're going to help with that insulin sensitivity, and they're going to reduce your insulin resistance on your cell. And then these foods are, they don't have a lot of toxins. They're healing. They have phytonutrients, antioxidants. They're less inflammatory. So when we talked about having a healthy immune system, plant-based diets really do play into that. So, I can say all this, but I really wanted to give some of the research behind what I'm saying here. So I'm going to go through a few studies that actually show plant-based diets improving metabolic health. So bear with me here. We'll go through a few of these research studies. So vegan diets and weight loss. So researchers put together through a review of clinical interventional studies and observational studies They compared weight loss effects between different diets. And they found that vegan participants experienced the greatest weight loss after 6 months and was associated with improved metabolic health. So what was their summary of findings? That vegan diets, because they're high in fiber and low in saturated fat, can help reduce body fat and improve the basal metabolic rate, right? We talked about that. It actually improves your BMR and supports a healthier metabolism. What about insulin sensitivity? Remember, we talked about hormonal control. So the researchers in this study, it actually was an interventional study. They tracked body weight, fat composition, insulin sensitivity, and the thermic effect of food at their assessments. And they found that at the end of the research trial, that the vegan group had lost 14 pounds. The fat inside their liver went down 34%. The fat inside their muscles went down 10%, which increases your insulin sensitivity when you have lower fat in your cells. So your cells can actually, oh, well, give me that blood sugar now. And their metabolism was increased by 18.7% compared to no significant change in the control group. So what was their final finding? It was that low-fat vegan diets, rich in whole foods, rich in fiber, low in saturated fats, it actually increased that after-meal burn and improved their weight, their insulin sensitivity, which is a key factor in maintaining an efficient metabolism and preventing metabolic syndrome. So plant-based diets and metabolic syndrome in general, right? We talked about this. So in 2018, there was a meta-analysis. So what that is just a bunch of studies. They looked at all of them and they said, on average, out of all these studies, when we see plant-based diets, how are people eating plant-based diets and how much do they have, these markers of metabolic syndrome, including obesity, high blood sugar, dyslipidemia, which is just abnormal cholesterol levels. And they found that plant-based diets were linked to a reduction in risk of metabolic syndrome. Their final findings were that this diet can lower not only your body mass index, which is your weight for height, it also improved cholesterol levels, it enhanced glucose metabolism, all contributing to better metabolic health. So we talked about BMR, we talked about insulin and hormone regulation, but what about vegan diets and just that resting energy expenditure, just that while you're sleeping? So there actually was a study that looked at the effect of plant-based diets on resting energy expenditure, and they found that vegans exhibited a higher amount of this burning energy while asleep compared to omnivores. They said possibly due to differences in body composition and increased thermogenesis from the plant-based foods. Their implication, higher resting energy expenditure is associated with more efficient calorie burning at rest, a key factor for supporting healthy metabolism. All right, a few more. So all these vegan foods are so high in fiber. What else does that do for us? It helped with our BMR. It's helping with weight loss. So this study actually looked at vegan diets and the gut microbiome. There's so much new information coming out about this, but they found that vegan diets promote a more diverse gut microbiome, and it's linked to better metabolic health. This study showed that plant-based diets increased the presence of short-chain fatty acids. So when your gut bugs you eat the fiber, they produce this short-chain fatty acid, and that is actually the #1 food that our gut lining needs. They need this short-chain fatty acid. So if you've heard of leaky gut, if you've heard of gut dysbiosis, that could be because you're not getting enough of these short chain fatty acids from the gut bugs in your tummy, right? So, but all this, not only do the short chain fatty acids actually help your gut lining, they actually pass into your bloodstream, and they have been shown to actually enhance insulin sensitivity and help with blood sugar regulation. So their findings were a healthy gut microbiota can promote more effective digestion, nutrient absorption, and energy utilization, improving metabolic function. All right, one more. Vegan diets, we talked about BMR, we talked about the insulin sensitivity. What about thermic effect of food? We kind of touched on this. So there was another research study published that highlighted the thermic effect of food, which is the energy required to digest. And it found that plant-based foods, particularly high fiber plus high protein, so those would be your legumes, your beans, your peas, they increase this thermic effect of food, leading to a higher metabolic rate post-meal compared to meals of animal fats. The conclusion, consuming plant-based diets with Complex carbohydrates and fiber can increase the energy you use for digestion, supporting overall metabolism. So that was a lot of studies, I know, and I know you're waiting to hear from Dr. Barnard. I'm just going to go a few last little slides because I can't walk away without giving you my tips and tricks. If you really want to add more plant-based foods into your diet and really boost your metabolism, I wanted to give you my quick tricks. I know Dr. Becker and Noah talked about this, so if you want to go back and watch the previous lecture, they do talk a lot more about how to eat more plant-based. But for me, take inventory of what you're already eating. Look at your, say, oh, I love hummus. I love fresh vegetables. Take inventory of what you're eating just in the last week of whole foods. Maybe you love fresh corn. Maybe you have pasta and marinara sauce. That's going to, they're already these plant-based foods that you're eating. And we don't need to fully flip your diet on its head. We can just find the foods that you're already eating and maybe eat more of those. Next would be maybe to start with easy swaps. So right now you're drinking cow's milk, which is high in cholesterol, high in saturated fat, uh, low in fiber, zero fiber actually. Maybe just try some of the other plant milks. They're going to have no cholesterol. They're going to be lower in saturated fat, and they're actually going to have some fiber. Soy milk has some fiber in there. So it's going to be these easy swaps, easy things that you're already eating cereal for breakfast. Oh, I can just swap out to a plant-based milk. We're all worried about, we don't want to waste food, right? And so just after you eat something up, decide that, okay, then when I go to buy fresh, I'm getting a plant-based option, right? I'm going to finish eating up, drinking the milk that I'm putting in my coffee. And then when I go to buy something new, I'll look for something that's whole food, plant-based. That's really going to boost my metabolism. There's also kind of the crowd it off your plate method, right? If you have like a chicken breast left in your fridge, you can split it with your roommate and fill the rest of your plate with maybe a side salad, asparagus, corn, pasta, and red sauce, really bulking up the other items on your plate that are going to be promoting and boosting your metabolism. And then find what you like and repeat. We're not saying to go and try some crazy meal that you're like, I'm just not into mushrooms. Don't tell me to eat mushrooms. I don't want to eat them. Find what you like. Find if you are into, I'm a big, hummus wrap, veggie wrap person. If you like it, that's good with me. Eat it. I will say try new recipes, even if, I know we're all busy. We all have families. We are all working and going to school, but trying new recipes at least once a week can really support adding in these plant-based options more often. And find support, just like in this group that you're all here listening to this lecture, find others that are trying to eat more plant-based as well. Okay, and I just want to highlight a few recipes. If you're like, yes, Stephanie, give me all the recipes. If you go to pcrm.org/recipes, we have tons of not only high fiber whole food recipes, but also high protein. And remember, that's a double whammy when we're burning to digest. So we could do pasta with lentil red sauce, black bean tacos, tempeh sloppy joe. These are items that are familiar, right? We all eat pasta. We all love tacos. We all love a sandwich type food. So we have these recipes on our website to really support if you're trying to add in more plant-based options. All right, last slide. What's my big takeaway before Dr. Barnard comes in? A healthy plant-based diet is low in calorie density, high in fiber, low in saturated fat, high in antioxidants. And that translates to better weight management, improved insulin sensitivity, improved lipid profile, reduces blood pressure, improves your vascular health. And all that gives you a healthy functioning metabolism and reduces your risk of heart disease, which is the #1 cause of death for Americans. 1 in 4 deaths are from heart disease. And that is my final slide. And I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Barnard. I know we're all awaiting his presentation as well, where he's going to talk about specific foods for metabolism.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. That was terrific. All right, let me share my screen. I'm going to try to pick up where you left off. We did a research study. The first time we did this one was almost 20 years ago, and we recently repeated it, but I want to walk you through what we found. We were looking for foods that could help people to lose weight in an easy way. We brought in 64 women. They were all after the age of menopause. They all wanted to lose weight, and they had done Atkins, South Beach, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, cabbage soup, every kind of diet you can imagine. And they were kind of frustrated because these diets would cause short-term weight loss, but it didn't stick. So what we did is we randomly assigned them to one of two different diets. The first was a low-fat vegan diet. And when I say vegan, I don't mean a person from the planet Vegas. I just mean a person who doesn't need any animal products. And the other half of them went on what I'm going to call a conventional diet. A heart-healthy diet, like eating more chicken, taking the skin off the chicken, that kind of thing. I'm not recommending that, but that was our control group, the group that didn't make substantial changes. Okay, so it was also, we asked people not to change their exercise. Exercise is great, but this was a study where we're trying to zero in on what food would do. So no exercise changes. 14-week study, and the vegan group was really kind of worried because they were used to cutting calories and avoiding carbohydrate and things. And we were telling them you could eat these foods: pancakes, oatmeal, cantaloupe. They could eat a half cantaloupe or 3 cantaloupes. We didn't have any portion sizes. They could eat as much as they wanted. And then they realized they could eat chili and fruit and linguine and all kinds of stuff. They were convinced they would gain a lot of weight, because the only rules were vegan, meaning no animal products, and also keep oils low. Oily foods would be low. You wouldn't eat a lot of oily stuff. And then, to make everything worse, at about the 3rd or 4th week of the study, our participants discovered that Twizzlers are vegan. That's right. I wasn't thinking about that at first when we designed the study. The whole rules were just don't eat animal products, keep oils low. I wasn't thinking about Twizzlers. But if you read the label, they're just sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk, and I guess they're vegan. Anyway, so what happened? So we asked half the people to go on a low-fat vegan diet, the other half to be on a control diet. And what we found is that the vegan group lost about not quite 13 pounds in 14 weeks. That's good. And only about 8 pounds for the control group. So the first thing that we found is that when people do what Stephanie just said, get the animal products off our plate, and we keep the oils low, we're going to lose weight if we have weight to lose. And we could do that without worrying about how many calories I'm eating, how many portion size, what our portion size is, carbs and that kind of, we're not worrying about that. The weight just comes off. But then here's the other question. What happened after the people stopped? After these 14 weeks? Well, for the comparison group, the control group, they put their weight back on. But the vegan group didn't. They kept it off. So they were skinnier 2 years later than they were during the study. Okay, so that's good. All right. So we found that you don't need to count your portions and carbs and stuff. But one more thing. Stephanie was talking about changing your metabolism, changing how your body burns calories. Everybody in the study came into our laboratory first thing in the morning. And this is their calorie burning speed. This is how fast your body is burning calories. And it's really low. So I know that because we can measure it. What happens is you sit in a chair and I put on your face a mask that covers your mouth and nose. And what I'm doing is I'm measuring how much oxygen your body is taking in minute by minute, how much carbon dioxide it's putting out. And with some pretty simple arithmetic, I know how many calories you're burning minute by minute, because the more calories you burn, the more oxygen you're taking in. Okay, so, all right. So your metabolism is really low because you haven't had breakfast. Now I'm going to give you breakfast. And I know exactly what the breakfast is. It's a special test meal that we use in the laboratory, and your metabolism goes up because I'm absorbing these fuels in the food that I'm eating, basically. My body's absorbing them, I'm burning calories, and it stays higher for maybe 3 hours after the meal. Okay, cool. Now, Everybody now starts their healthy vegan diet. We've already learned that if they're eating more carbs and more plant proteins, they'll burn calories faster. But after about 14 weeks on the healthy vegan diet, everyone came back into the laboratory. They sat in the same chair. They put on the same mask to measure their oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. And we gave them the very same test meal, but what we discovered was their metabolism wasn't the same. It had increased by about 15%. Now, wait a minute. Stephanie said if I eat certain kinds of foods, my metabolism will be better. But now we found that it's not just what you're eating at the time, it's also what you have been eating in the recent days. Why? Why is my metabolism better? How is it that I'm burning calories better? Okay, fasten your seatbelt. I'm going to show you. This is a cell, a cell in your body. Let's say I take a needle and I put it in your bicep muscle here, and I pull out one muscle cell. That's what that is. Muscle cells have what we call mitochondria in them. You remember that word, mitochondria? Those are the little burners inside your cells. You got a lot of them. And mitochondria are your big friends because they're inside muscle cells. And the more active they are, they're turning food into energy, into strength. Okay, so mitochondria are good. If you got a lot of them, you're going to burn calories. But here's the bad news. There's something else inside that cell. Fat. Little fat particles. Now, see those yellow fat particles? Actually, doctors don't like words like fat because it only has 3 letters. So doctors call it intramyocellular lipid. That's fat. That's what that means is fat inside a muscle cell. Okay, but here's what matters. Here's what matters. Watch this. Okay, I'm going to go out to a restaurant. I'm going to eat cheese pizza. And I'm going to say, oh, I want the one with cheese on it. And cheese is 70% fat. Some of that fat gets into my muscle cells. Yeah, some of that fat from the cheese is getting inside my muscle cells. Look what's happening here. The fat is building up. And when that happens, the mitochondria get crowded. They can't burn calories effectively. Okay, you with me? So here's what I'm saying. The fat that gets in your cells slows down your after meal calorie burn. The mitochondria can't burn calories very well after a meal because of all the fat that's in the cell. So wait a minute, wait, stop. What can I do? I got to fix this. So I'm going to say to Stephanie, help me out. What should I do? And she'll say, well, how much animal fat are you eating? Well, I'm eating a lot because I'm eating cheese and chicken wings and all kinds of stuff. And she'll say, well, why don't you stop doing that for a while? Really? Okay. No animal products, no meat, no. Okay. That's going to get rid of all the animal fat. But then Stephanie's going to say, go one step further. How about all the fat? How about the vegetable fat, vegetable oils? What's that? The fat in a French fry. All, the onion rings and the things come out of the fryer and all that dripping grease. What if I skip the fatty foods? But apples and vegetables and fruits and vegetables and grains and beans, they don't really have much fat. Okay, so I'm going to keep the animal products out. I'm going to keep the vegetable oils low too, and watch what happens in this cell. Here it goes. The fat is disappearing. It's going away. And when that happens, the mitochondria can work again, which is why your metabolism goes back up. Okay, so let's say you're 35. And you say, man, when I was 15, I could eat anything. I wouldn't gain an ounce. But now that I'm a little older, I just look at food and I start gaining weight. What's that about? My metabolism is slowing down. Okay. It is not your age. It is not your genetics. It's caused just by what you've been eating recently. And we can reverse that. If we get the fat out of our diet, we get the fat out of our cells, our mitochondria start burning calories like you're a teenager. So here's my message. Get the fat out of your cells and boost your after meal calorie burn. Okay, so cool. So let me go back to some basics here. Let's just talk calories for a second. How many calories are there in a gram of fat? If I have fat like animal fat or vegetable fat, any kind of fat, it's got 9 calories in that gram. A gram is not much. A gram is like tiny amount. 9 calories in a gram of fat. But if I have carbohydrates, it's got only 4. And let's say I have fiber, which is just plant roughage. Well, it doesn't have any or almost none. What this means is I can fill up on anything. I can fill up on fatty foods. I can fill up on high carbohydrate foods. But if I fill up on the high carbohydrate foods and the high fiber foods, by the time I fill up, I won't really be getting that many calories. If I fill up on fatty foods, by the time I'm full, I took in a lot of calories, and now the scale is not so happy with me anymore. Okay, so we put this to the test. Here's what we did. We brought in 62 people who wanted to lose weight. Half of them we put on the low-fat vegan diet that we've been talking about. No animal products, keep oils low. And I know what you're thinking. There's not much fat in that. There's not a lot of calories. You're right. Okay. But the other group, the other half of the people that went on a Mediterranean diet. Now, a Mediterranean diet means lots of fruits and vegetables, but it's not vegetarian. There's still some chicken in there. So I guess that means there's some chicken fat. There's some fish in there. So that means there's some fish fat. They use olive oil, which is better than lard, but it's still got 9 calories per gram because it's fat too. Okay, so you can see where this is going. So let me show you what happened with their weight. Remember, we brought in, half of them went on a Mediterranean diet, half on a vegan diet. And then after 16 weeks, they switched diets. Everybody got both. Some started Mediterranean, then went vegan, some the other way. Okay, so here's what happened. The Mediterranean group came in and we tracked their weight, and they thought, this is great. This is a wonderful thing. It's like I'm living on the coast of Italy and I'm eating all this wonderful food. But the only problem is I'm not really losing much weight. What's that about? Now, the vegan group, they discovered that following a vegan diet doesn't mean that you have to acquire a taste for folk music. It just means that you're following a vegan diet, no animal products, and they lost weight like crazy. After 16 weeks, everybody stopped. They took 4 weeks off, and then they did the opposite diet. So the Mediterranean group now went vegan, and their weight came off. But the group that had been vegan now started the Mediterranean diet, and they started putting their weight back on. Why? Chicken fat, fish fat, olive oil came back into their diet. And I have to say they're the angriest group of research participants we've ever had. They said, I can't wait for this darn study to be over so I can go back to that vegan diet, which is really helping me out. Okay, so a vegan diet is great for weight loss. A Mediterranean diet, not so good. Now, don't get me wrong. A Mediterranean diet is better than what many people are eating on their own, but it is not as good as a diet that's made entirely from plants, okay? Now, if I haven't said enough bad things about certain foods, let me say a few more. There are certain foods that are much worse than others for weight loss, and I'm going to pick on Coca-Cola. No, Coca-Cola does have some problems. Something more problematic might be coming into my screen. What's the deal with cheese? Cheese? Okay. The fat content of lean beef is about 29% as a percentage of calories. For a skinless chicken breast, about 23%, and other foods, they vary. Chinook salmon, 52%. All right. So here's my question. Cheese. Is it a fatty food like beef or salmon, or is it really low fat like rice or sweet potato? What do you think? Well, I'm going to guess cheese might be more fatty. Let's see. Whoa, 70% fat. It's worse. It's worse than beef. Oh my goodness sakes. Yes, it's true. And there is Coke Zero, but there is no Cheddar Zero. In other words, whatever calories are in there, you're going to get them. All right. And the average American consumes how many calories from cheese every year? Drum roll, please. The answer is 70,000. 70,000 calories just from cheese. Yes, yes, exactly. Okay. All right. I'm sorry to be so depressing. Now, fiber is good. As Stephanie was saying, fiber, it's in beans, it's in vegetables, and it fills you up with almost no calories. That's great. So there's fiber in beans, there's fiber in broccoli, there's fiber in apples. How about cheese? Let's see. Fiber means plant roughage. Cheese is a No, cheese isn't a plant, is it? Darn it. Doesn't have any fiber at all. That's terrible. So every calorie I get, I'm going to fill up on this. All right. Sodium. What's sodium do? Just you need a little sodium in your diet, but if I have too much, my blood pressure. Okay. So an orange has 1 milligram of sodium, an apple has 2, brown rice has 20, and a potato has 13. But if I take that potato and I cut it into potato chips, and the factory salts it up, 2 ounces of potato chips have 330 milligrams of sodium. So here's my question. Where's cheese? Is it more like an orange or an apple, or is it more like potato chips? Well, 2 ounces of cheddar has 350. 2 ounces of Edam has 500. 2 ounces of Velveeta, drum roll, please. 800 milligrams of sodium in 2 ounces of Velveeta. If it were any worse, it would be Vaseline. I have to tell you, it's really high in fat, high in sodium, doesn't have any fiber at all. Okay, so why do people eat cheese? Well, we get a little hooked on it. Am I speaking the truth? We can get a little bit hooked on cheese. So here's part of why. Casein, C-A-S-E-I-N, that's the name of the milk protein. When milk comes out of the cow, there's a protein in it, it's called casein. When you digest milk, that casein breaks into what are called casein-derived morphine-like compounds. That's the name scientists gave these compounds. Morphine-like, meaning they're like a drug, meaning they're like an opiate, meaning they're like morphine, meaning they go to your brain and they attach to the very same receptors that fentanyl, morphine, or any other narcotic would attach to. Let me make clear what I'm saying. This is not a drug given to a cow. The cow's body makes the casein protein. When you digest it, out come these natural opiates that the cow's body made. And this will not be on the test. This is the chemical structure of them. But that fourth one down on the list, they're called morphoceptin. I want to zero in on morphoceptin. Let me show you the chemical structure. The reason I'm showing you that is it has about 1/10 the brain receptor binding power compared with pure pharmacy grade morphine. Not enough to get you arrested, okay? But more than enough to make you think, ooh, I feel better after I had a little bit of cheese. And so people get hooked on cheese. I'm suggesting that cheese could be addicting. It's partly because we like fatty and salty foods. I mean, onion rings and French fries and potato chips have salt and they have grease, and we get hooked on that. Same with cheese, but they have this opiate ingredient too. Okay, let me say some more bad things about salmon. Everybody thinks salmon is healthy, but Atlantic salmon is 40% fat and Chinook salmon is 52% fat. If you're trying to lose weight and salmon is a big part of your diet, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Yeah, I know I'm breaking your heart, but this is the truth. It's just really fatty. Okay, and olive oil has 9 calories per gram and coconut oil has 9 calories per gram. So any kind of fat, you don't want to go crazy with it. You want to keep it low. But let me say some especially bad things about coconut oil. Here's why. People are pushing it. You'll see articles saying, oh, it's natural, it's healthy, it's all this, it's a great stuff. And coconut oil and palm oil are both what we call tropical oils. And they're kind of buttery compared to other oils. They're more solid. And so they have this mouthfeel that goes really well in a cookie. But look at the saturated fat content. Saturated fat, that's the bad fat. That's the one that raises your cholesterol. Look over on the left, there's coconut oil, 83% saturated fat. Yikes. Then next to it, beef fat is almost 50% palm oil, just like it, 50%. Ugh. That's going to raise my cholesterol. Will it? Yes, it sure will. Back in 2020, researchers looked at 16 different trials, and they showed your bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, went up about 10.5 points from eating coconut oil. So don't do that. Palm oil, same thing, 12 points in your LDL. So people add coconut oil, they add palm oil to foods to make them buttery. I would avoid that. Okay. Now, there are appropriate uses of coconut oil and palm oil. Let me show you what they are. You can make a candle out of it. You can shine your shoes. You could even wax your car with coconut oil if you tried, and it goes great in your hair. I would not eat it. Okay, so what's a healthy diet? Fruits, grains, vegetables, legumes, and vitamin B12, very important. You need it for healthy nerves, healthy blood. This turns into great foods. Blueberry syrup on French toast. Yeah, why not? It's plant-based, and we're not going to glop it up with a lot of butter. There are so many ways to make plant-based foods appealing, delicious, fun. It's really a question of kind of finding out the ones that you like the most. That's really what makes it work. We see a lot of patients who have diabetes and weight issues, and we help them with plant-based foods. Let me share with you a couple of folks who've done this. This is Shanae. Shanae grew up in Kansas City. In her household, she said, we had a lot of food, but it wasn't necessarily so healthy. And her mother had had a weight problem most of her life. When Shanae was 12, her mother said, Shanae, you've been gaining quite a lot of weight. And she said, I want you to come with me to my weight loss program. And when she was a kid, she was put on weight loss drugs. She was, what's it like to be a kid? They say, you got to lose weight, take this drug, get your food scale, try to eat less, don't spend so much screen time. It's not just a physical issue. You start to get kind of beat up by all this criticism you're getting. Well, something good happened to Shanae. As time went on, she found a different approach. She discovered that there were certain foods that she really liked that loved her back, like apples and oranges and bananas and healthy plant-based foods. She started eating more and more and more plant-based foods. And eventually she ate entirely plant-based foods. And she started losing weight and losing weight and losing weight. She ended up losing 100 pounds. And when you lose 100 pounds, her confidence came roaring back right in. And Shanae just felt fantastic. And so she said to her mom, Mom, I want to show you something. These are the foods that I want to help you to learn to like. And she just felt great. And so she was able to help the whole rest of her family. Let me share with you one more. This is Steve. Steve is a doctor. He's a cardiologist in California. He was running a half marathon in Monterey Bay. Half marathon is 13 miles, a little bit more than 13 miles. He starts out running. In front of him on the track was a man who fell over and was unresponsive. Steve is a cardiologist. He ran over there. He tried to take the man's pulse. The man had no pulse. So he said, who's got a cell phone? Call 911 right away. They call 911. They get an ambulance. The ambulance brings a defibrillator where you put the pads on the chest, you shock them. They got a pulse. Steve saved his life. Okay. I'm glad I came out to this race, could save this man's life. So he goes to the finish line, and there's another man on the ground with no pulse. And Steve is thinking to himself, this cannot be happening. So they call 911, they get an ambulance over there, they get a defibrillator, they shock this man, and Steve saves 2 lives in one day. Now, he became famous because the Today Show heard about this amazing thing that this cardiologist saved these lives. And so they reunited them all on TV. But what they didn't know is that Steve had been talking to these guys before already and said, you got to do a plant-based diet. It'll help you enormously. But the reason I'm telling you this is not because this is just a cool story. It's a cool story, but Steve had his own story. When he was a medical student, he was heavy. And when he was a resident and a cardiology fellow, he had a lot of excess weight. And he had tried to lose weight by taking the skin off his chicken and monitoring his portions and exercising more. Once he found a plant-based diet, that is what knocked the weight off. That's what gave him the energy. And now he's become a good friend of ours and has helped us enormously with spreading the word. Okay, the last thing I just want to is how we adopt this diet, because for many people, they think, oh man, it's probably going to be hard to do, isn't it? Easiest thing in the world. Here's what you do. If you'd like to try it, take 7 days to check out the possibilities. Don't take anything out of your diet. Just take a piece of paper and start writing on this piece of paper things you would eat if you were avoiding animal products. What would you eat? So, okay, I don't need anything special. I just put cereal in a bowl. All right, yeah, fine. But if it's almond milk on top, that's plant-based. It's not fancy, but that's fine. Or rice milk or soy milk or you name it. Okay, wait, I can make oatmeal and I can put fruit on top. Does that count? Of course, that's great. I can eat sausage if it's a plant-based sausage. Is there such a thing? There absolutely is. There's veggie bacon. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, skip it. There's mixes of all kinds, many kinds of healthy breakfasts, healthy lunches. The whole idea is just find the food you like. If you're going out to an Italian place, fine, they'll make you pizza without cheese. They'll take the ground beef off your spaghetti and put a marinara sauce on top, fine. Latin American, easiest thing in the world. Beans, rice, veggie fajitas. Chinese, well, maybe that's, yeah, might be easier, I'm not sure. Rice, vegetables, tofu dishes, great. Japanese, so you can have the cucumber roll, the sweet potato roll, the asparagus roll, fine. Okay, Taco Bell. Not the pinnacle of culinary art, but I'm eating a meat taco. What can I have? I'll have the soft shell taco. I'm not going to have meat. I'll put in beans. I'll put in some jalapeno peppers. I'll put in some tomatoes and some lettuce and skip the cheese. All right, that works. I'll go to Subway. I'll have all the veggie toppings. Okay, fine. So after 7 days, you got a huge list. Step 2 is just eat those foods. For the next 3 weeks, no animal products, eat the foods you like. 2 things will happen. Physically, you'll change. You'll lose weight. You'll feel better. If you got diabetes, it's going to get better. But the other thing is your taste change. You start to appreciate these foods. And then you just carry it as far as you want and see what happens. This is a book I wrote on this topic called The Power Foods Diet. You'll see it at your local library. And thank you for letting me share this time. Let me unshare. And if you have questions or whatever, Stephanie and I'd be glad to take them.
There's an interesting question. Was Dr. Neil in Game Changer? I don't know what that is, but I'm
Oh, well,
hoping
thank you.
that.
Game Changers is a movie, and it's all about sports and how athletes can power up their sports with nutrition, and it uses a healthy plant-based diet. So have a look at it. You'll see Game Changers. I think it's probably on Netflix, and have a look. You'll love it.
I see some questions in the chat. Are there any good fats that could support a healthy metabolism, like avocado?
Mm.
Stephanie, that's a question for you, I think.
Yeah. So avocados are high in fat. They're a plant-based food. Um, if we have a little bit on top, as a garnish, I think that won't be overdoing. If you have a full avocado, they're going to be still high in fat, but it's not an oil. It's, what we have is olives, and you strain all the fat out of it, and that's how you get olive oil. And so it's going to be an ultra processed food. It is just the fat. And so these oils, even vegetable oils, are not going to be health promoting, but a whole food like avocado or maybe nuts, when in as a garnish could definitely be part of a healthy diet.
Thank you. And Akaro, you had a question in the chat. I wanted you to clarify that via audio.
Oh, yes. So far this has been great. But my question was, the goal is to have an active and healthier metabolism, us to, which leads us to why, where am I again? Oh, which is why is the focus so much on weight loss rather than a better internal health? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so the question is, why focus on weight loss? Why shouldn't we focus on good overall health? The two all go hand in hand. As Stephanie mentioned, the leading cause of death is cardiovascular disease. So when we get the animal products out of our diet, we're avoiding all the cholesterol, all the animal fat. That's good. Also, if we do have extra weight, when we can get rid of that unwanted weight, it takes the strain off our heart. It also reduces our risk of diabetes and high blood pressure. So the reason this is really important is a lot of people are trying to lose weight, but often with ways that might be rough on them and not work so well over the long run. So by starving themselves, leading just to weight regain later, or medications rather than focusing on food. So that's the reason that the losing excess weight does help these other conditions. But you're absolutely right. It's not all about weight, and it's not about how you look in your bikini. It's all about both health. Well, it's about the health aspects of getting rid of that unwanted weight that's hurting us and following a good overall diet.
Somebody asks, how do I ensure I'm intaking enough protein?
Stephanie, what do you think? Can I get protein?
Yeah, so I just want to let everyone know this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but there is protein in all whole foods, even down to the raspberries. They have all 9 essential amino acids. I know there used to be this thought that we have to combine beans with grains to get a complete protein. But actually, when you look at the research and you look at every single amino acid, every single item, whole food, has all 9. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. As long as you're eating enough to feel full, and satisfied, you're eating whole food, plant-based, you're going to be getting enough protein. And then if you are someone who's like, well, I want to just make sure, if you're a little bit, you just look to those higher protein whole foods, beans, uh, tofu, tempeh, even broccoli is very high in protein. So if you're really trying to jazz it up, you can find those higher protein whole foods.
Thank you. I have a question before you go, Caro. I'm on Instagram and I follow a lot of that do fitness, and they talk about what is it called? A diet a lot. And I feel like there's a lot of information and somewhat misinformation out there. What type of advice would you give to people in general about consuming such information when it's not evidence-based? Because I think that one of the things that I'm impressed by with the session is that, it is evidence-based. You're looking at research, you're doing experiments, and I think that's important. And you don't hear people cite their information a lot when they talk about these things. So what advice do you have when you're consuming that information?
I feel your pain. It's really hard to tell the difference because there's a lot of promotion, there's a lot of kind of nonsense, and there are also some things that we don't know yet. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. That said, what we look for is consistency of findings. So for example, if we find that populations of people who follow a plant-based diet on their own tend to be healthier or live longer, that's good information. Then if we find that in a randomized research study, we put people on that diet and they get the same kind of benefit that people might have gotten in population studies, that's more evidence. If we can find out why it works. So the beauty of what we've been talking about is that the consistency of evidence is extremely high and the evidence base is very, very strong, which is not something that we see in other diets. Also, there's no negatives. There are no risks to a diet like this, provided we're planning it right. You want to have a variety of foods. You want to have not just beans. You want to have vegetables. You want to have fruits. You want to have grains. You want to make sure you take your B12. That's important. If we're doing those things together, we got a great healthy diet.
Thank you. And I know we're at time. I don't know if you have time for a Cara's question.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Great, thank you so much. Quick, I'm a man of a certain age. I might look a little youthful, but I find that when I started like really focusing a lot on my health like in the last 3 years, like I needed supplements to help me kind of boost my metabolism, increase my energy. But what types of foods do you guys like recommend to eat that will kind of shift me away from having to depend on supplements and I can, transfer that into like the foods that I eat that can give me the same results?
So you're looking at what foods will make you feel more energetic.
Yes.
Stephanie, do you want to start off on that? And I've got a couple things I might add.
Yeah, I think when we are looking at food for performance, you want to look at also a lot of high fiber foods that's going to give you long lasting energy. So, you could say oatmeal, but you also need that quick energy to get up and go. So adding something that's kind of like fruit, which is going to give you that quick kind of burst of energy, but then have oatmeal in there as well, or some sort of really kind of high fiber item that's just going to have that slow release of energy throughout the day to get you to that next meal. And a lot of times when you have these higher fiber meals, you're not going to have that spike and then drop, right? And which sometimes that's what we feel. We feel this like, okay, right after the meal, we feel great. And then an hour later, we're all of a sudden like, whoo, I'm dragging. And when we don't have that fiber, that slowly released food, as our body, it takes a while to digest this fiber and it takes some energy and it's releasing into our bloodstream, you'll find that you'll have that sustained energy throughout the day.
I think that's great. One other thing I might add is you might know the Thanksgiving afternoon slowdown. People ate that big meal, and then they're watching a football game afterwards, and they're all asleep by about 2:30. Now, it's not the tryptophan in the turkey or whatever they're saying online. It's all that turkey gravy and all the fat in the apple pie and all the fat that's in the foods gets in your bloodstream. It makes your blood more viscous, more thick. And when your blood is thicker from all that grease, it slows the oxygenation of the brain. And so you feel crummy. So try this as an experiment. For a couple of days, have no animal products at all, totally plant-based, and keep oils really low. And what you'll discover is that in the afternoon, you're awake and you're feeling pretty good. Now, it may take a little while to find the right kind of vegan food. You kind of want to experiment a little bit, see the ones you like. And you'll discover that your energy just tends to kind of improve and improve and improve. And that's true whether you're an athlete or not. So give it a try, see how it works. Well,
I know
thank you so much.
I know we're a little bit over time, but thank you, Dr. Bernard and Stephanie, for an insightful and somewhat heartbreaking presentation for cheese and meat lovers. We truly appreciate your attention and enthusiasm about this work, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you, everyone who attended. Have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you
Thank you.
all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.